Something tells me we need a new intro.
Well, welcome. Another Rockstar X live here on, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, Facebook, we're all over the place. Joel, are you going to do some introductions, my friend?
I'm all over my chair. So, yes, this was meant to be September's one, but due to collision and double booking, we had to move it to, first it was the 7th, then it was this week. So,
but we are here now.
We are here now. We have Jamie to my left, our guest, and the guy who can't keep his mouth shut to my right. The other way around. Sorry. Jamie to my right. I'm back to my left, yeah. And this conversation is neurodiversity and autism. Are there, I believe, any differences? I think that's the title I gave it, or rather, ChatGPT gave it.
We've already had a question about just your intro. Who's shredding on the guitar?
That was one of my former idiot band members.
Oh, goodness me. But yeah, let's get this conversation started. I'm looking forward to getting to learn all about you, Jamie, because your profile here on LinkedIn is intriguing, to say the least. And I'm fascinated by many different facets of it, dealing with burnout and all these different things and working with corporates and trying to understand how the whole neurodiversity versus autism fits into the picture. So I'd love you to do a bit of an intro and just let people know, kind of who you are, and why the subject means something to you, and then we'll go from there.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, first and foremost. I will do a contextualized introduction. You can go to my profile and learn more about me or my site. But within the context, I'm Jamie London Wahlberg, and I have experienced what I refer to as the tri-awakening, which is that I had a spiritual awakening, a health journey awakening, and an identity awakening all in one shot. And how it relates to neurodiversity and autism is absolutely a part of that identity piece. And the shift that happened in my life when I was raised as a girl, I was assigned female at birth and transitioned to have a transmasculine non-binary experience, and how my neurodivergence was then and what they saw then, because they treat females very differently in that space, and then how I respond now in learning that I have autism and navigating that whole experience. I identify as a leader of love professionally and in my heart and soul. That means that I am someone who puts myself in leadership positions in order to support and better this planet. Typically, my passions are in the spiritual and metaphysical as a healer, as well as a coach and a mentor. And I do this predominantly within entrepreneurs, corporate spaces, and leaders on a one-on-one and group capacity in order to create an impact, helping them to get out of burnout and connect deeper with themselves. And the irony of all of that is, as a neurodivergent autism person, connecting with people can be really challenging, but I also happen to somehow be very good at helping people with it. So here we are. That's a little about me and why I care so much about it.
Wow. Well, Joel, you jump in first, because I've got that's opened a whole can of worms. There's so many questions, but at the same time, just that last part I want to focus on, about the fact that you mentioned about, a lot of people assume because you're autistic or neurodivergent that that putting yourself out there and going past that comfort zone of actually speaking to people. Everybody says, there's no eye contact. Everybody's got an assumption of what they think, as we've all experienced, and Joel and I have discussed many times. But that everybody's just we've got to embrace those differences, and I want to get into that. But Joel, over to you, my friend.
Well, my mind's blown. I sailed into orbit.
Tell us what how the two of you firstly got connected, and where those conversations ended up going. Obviously, we know it ended up here because this is what was that? How did it all come about?
Was it Jason?
Yes, I think it was. We were connected on LinkedIn rather recently through a mutual connection. We had a call, and it was, I loved it. It was like perfectly fun and awkward and just magical. And in the process of all of that, we discovered sort of this linked curiosity around the current larger topic of, is autism neurodiversity? What is the difference? How are they correlated? And I started to tell him that for me, it's very similar to how people look at different sexualities. And then in the larger component, there's something larger. And for me, I identify as queer because I like that sort of larger umbrella, but that's within, a even larger family. And so to me, neurodiversity is like this really big spectrum and umbrella, and autism has a very strong anchor in that, I think, just because that's how it has been. And also there's a lot of overlap. Like there's a lot of people who are autistic and also fit somewhere else within what they identify with in neurodiversity. And I believe that autism also has a spectrum in itself. And we were both like, wow, like we should go live and talk about this. and here we are. We're going live talking about this.
I love that because, in many of the conversations Joel and I have had with, whether it be between the two of us or various other people on some of these live discussions, we've likened the whether it be autism or neurodiversity, just being a different type of communication to whether it be, as you mentioned, sexuality, religion, culture, language difference. Like it's as simple as Joel put it to me a few years ago of it's just a different language, it's just different programming, it's Xbox versus PlayStation, kind of thing. And when we can simplify things to that level of understanding, it opens better communication. Unfortunately, humans by nature, communication, whether you're neurodivergent or not everybody's that good at communicating. They might be good at talking. Listening, not so much.
Selective hearing, plenty.
Selective hearing. But I love the intro that you did, Jamie, because I've got to show this comment because Lewis made this comment. He went, that's a lot of awakening. I barely even woken up this morning. And that's in some ways, that's a scary, but also an exciting journey. Because once you get through all of that, you can, the freedom to express yourself as you are and who you are. Not many people ever get to figure out who they are. I know people in their 50s, 60s, 70s still trying to figure out who they are, what they want. And then they kind of just go with the flow because they rock up at work, go home, eat, sleep, go back to work, and they exist, but they don't truly live and get to understand who they are within themselves. So there are a lot of, call them zombies walking around the globe, and hearing your story is, and we've only been on here for a few minutes and I'm already like inspired. So talk to me about, you mentioned I'm going to start with this part because you mentioned the fact that you got more confidence speaking to people and getting, across what for many people seem like a almost impossible barrier just doing that part. Never mind all the other things that you have achieved and been able to overcome, because all of those are hurdles that, you did them all simultaneously by the sounds of it, where most people, one of those in a lifetime would be good. So talk to me about that.
Communication is one of those things that is so simple yet so complicated. And I always say that humans, we love to complicate things. I am fascinated by communication. I believe in the love languages. I think one of the other things that Joel and I talked about on that call was how I had not long ago learned about the neurodivergent love languages. And I felt like my entire world was uplifted and made sense for the first time, which is, I think, what a lot of experience has been. It's like, I think I know, and then, whoa, actually now I know, now I see what the truth is. I think that I've always wanted to communicate love, and I have somehow found different ways to do that. However, somehow the way that I always communicated seemed to often either be silenced or sort of pushed off as something weird or strange or othered. And so, I mean, interestingly enough, my mom told me that I was speaking by like 7 months, 9 months, something like that. That was the first thing. I didn't physically get active first. I was talking in like phrases and like making some sort of sense, or at least to myself. She describes the first day that I went to camp, she read all these parenting books about like, okay, get prepared for separation anxiety. Like she might start crying and this and that and the other. And the way that she describes it is she dropped me off and I was like, bye, barely, bye mom. I was just like off, like I just walked away and I was like, ooh, like things to look at. And so, it was masked for so long, subconsciously, eventually, I guess, more subconsciously in that, consciously, I wanted desperately to fit in. I was bullied a lot. I wanted to be seen and heard and belong. Shocker to anybody, this is like a en masse human thing that we all want, right? This isn't like special to neurodivergence or to me by any means. And I was just so eager to be able to communicate effectively. And when I became bedridden in my early 20s, and I started to navigate this entire health journey, my body was shutting down so much that really the majority of the communication that I was having was very angry, very aggressive, and very internal. I was very depressed, I was suicidal, and I was terrified. And I had felt like I had essentially lost everything, because up until that point, I had this whole life that certainly wasn't easy to curate, but it was curated, falling into place. And I thought I understood everything about myself, to only discover that I didn't. And that the in between the lines wasn't enough for me anymore. And I started to open a new way of communicating with myself, with God, source, spirit, creator, whatever resonates with you. And through that journey, I started to learn how to communicate with other people. And the answers were authenticity, starting to get answers and strip back the layers and the masks and stop masking. And also being just authentic with myself and stepping into my power of who I truly am and being open to sharing it. And somehow I found my way, sort of.
I think we're always, that until we take our last breath, that there's always that learning journey and discovery. But there's several things I want to unpack here. But before I do, Joel, did you want to jump in and make any observations or questions?
He's been on a bigger journey than I have in my entire life. And that is saying something.
And you've been on a hell of a journey as well, my friend. And this is the thing, is each one of us have our own journey, our own story. And I'm loving the fact that, on LinkedIn generally, or whether it be YouTube probably more, but LinkedIn specifically, we don't often talk about, love as a topic. People always talking transactional, it's business, it's leads, it's, growing my business, it's all the stuff. But the reality is all that stuff is done so that we can fill something.
Yes.
And one of those, basic needs is, being accepted, being heard, and being loved. Those are some very basic needs. But we complicate things, as you were saying, Jamie. We're always in search of something different, and everybody's on a different search. And I was talking to somebody earlier today about this specifically because, over my time, I've been blessed to be in both a dysfunctional and then a very well-functioning family. And that's a whole story on its own. I won't go into too much detail right now. But having been on that journey and seeing people that have grown up on different journeys where they may not have had any of that, where so many people don't really understand what acceptance and love is, not because they stubborn or they just don't know it. They really just don't know because they haven't experienced that as a human being, whether it be because of family conditions, being bullied at school, being adopted, or being in the housing, what do you call it, the what do you call it,
housing.
The system where you continuously going from one house to the next, and not knowing who a family is. So the reality is those footsteps, those journeys, those experiences we take, they mold who we are and how we see the world. So hence, when you look at how some people react, like when you were saying when you were bedridden, those frustrations, the anger, the trying to communicate those emotions, now if somebody spoke to you at that time and tried to get to know you, it may not have been the best time, but that's where you were at. That's what you were going through. Now, for the person observing that, and this is what I want to get out to those listening, is that human nature, our nature, needs to be more open to understanding that people are on a different journey, have had different experiences, and therefore all three of us can have a totally different opinion but all be right. And that's one thing that people don't get. So when it comes to when did you find out, were you diagnosed early with autism, or when did you find out, Jamie?
So I have been putting the pieces together to this recently because a lot of things were hidden from me. A lot of things that were told to me I misunderstood, or we're just kind of all agreeing to call it miscommunicated. Because everyone needs to be able to kind of heal and move on, and it gets tough over the years, blurred lines. But basically, my mom says that I was showing signs around age 2. as I mentioned very early on in this conversation that we're all having now, many of us know or don't know that autism presents very differently in those predominantly with estrogen versus predominantly testosterone, and socially and societally, therefore, which impacts greatly on, because it's who diagnoses and how they go about the diagnosis, that changes what they're looking for and how easy it is to diagnose. So given the fact that I started transitioning in my 20s, the typical diagnosis stage around when you're young, they were looking at me as like this pretty, you know, what they deemed as this pretty functional, you know, kid who was nice and happy and social and all of these different things. And they kind of were like, this is an extrovert. And then it wasn't until they tested me when they realized, wow, Jamie's chart is like 98th percentile, 5th percentile kind of on certain things. And so apparently the major testing started in middle school, but they were refusing to test me for autism. They were only testing me, I guess, for overall neurodivergence. There was a test that I did not have at that time. And they were charging a ton of money, and it just wasn't lining up in the familial thing, which is something I couldn't possibly have known or understood until very recently, was a factor. And so they smacked a label on me as they kind of got eventually to high school. But in this all this time in between, they were like, we're not really sure, but like definitely not neurotypical. And then by the time I was in early high school, they slapped the label of executive functioning disorder onto me, which is fascinating in a lot of ways to me, because it shows kind of where we were. If anyone starts to learn about autism, like executive functioning is a huge component of that. It's like the core, you know, a huge core piece. And for me, that's how it presents, as a huge core piece. And so they slapped that label on me. And unfortunately, in doing so, I didn't get a lot of the resources, the help, the awareness, language, until way, way later. Currently, right now, I am going through the official testing for what they were referring to as an adult autism test with the state. And I'm doing this not because I personally need to be validated, because my mom was a clinical social worker for like my whole life, and I've been in therapy my whole life. I mean, I've got plenty of validation, and I have enough understanding and understanding to know that that's what's true now. But that's only been in the last, 2 years that this has gotten very clear to all of us, where we're sort of like all sitting on a couch on, oh, okay, now let's figure out what we're going to do about it. And finally, I got support in order to get this testing done, and where it's being comped, because for those who are not from the state and maybe don't know, like, our healthcare system is a total disaster. And so none of this would have been covered. And it took certain people going to bat for me, and a lot of circumstances of which I'm very grateful and privileged that I've had in order to finally get this going. And so now I'm on the third component, and the third test is the final test. So that's where
I'm glad that you've shared this with us, because this is one of the things, I'm glad that we've come much further. I don't think I can say far. I think further is probably the best word.
Yeah,
when it comes
you can't say far, no.
No, when it comes around diagnoses and slapping labels, I love the way you put that, because that's what traditionally has happened all over the place. Or if they can't slap a label, then it's the problem child, as I've experienced, as well as with one of my children. And it's it's sad, because what we're doing is we're putting more obstacles in the way for that individual, rather than being able to supply them with the tools to live their best life. And that for me is so important, that we're able to have these conversations so that we can educate people around us, and for people to realize, I loved when you said you were speaking at like 7-8 months. Now, when people talk about autism, a lot, depending on your personal experience or what you've read or looked up, you spoke about the difference in male and female autism there. And I know from my experience with autism that speaking came 2, 3, 4 years in.
Yeah.
So and that's when they started, and for those families affected like that, that's when they realized, oh, something's not right here, or something's different. And I've seen how emotionally it can totally destroy families because they don't know what's going on. And everybody, I say everybody very reservedly, because most parents will want to support their child and do the best for them. And I've seen, families tear apart because one parent is willing to do that fight and the other one is so frustrated with not knowing or understanding it that they eventually just walk away. And that's it's a sad thing, but it's reality. So educating people through these things to a stage where you don't have to fight for your diagnosis so that you can get the tools that you need. Now, that should be almost like, the basic. It should be, if you look at most countries and the Western world, we talk about, basic human rights, right to safety, right to food and water, right to education, and the right to party. But that is part of that education piece. And that should be a basic right that we are supporting our children and, grown up, because the reality is, may I ask, how old are you, Jamie?
I'm 35.
Okay. So, this is a big thing for you to go through at this age. And it means as a human being, you also have to go through, transitions of a different kind where it's a transition in thinking. It's like, is that, and for me, I only found out because of my child being diagnosed with ADHD. I went, that's not weird. I do most of it. And then I went for a diagnosis and was like, okay, well, there we go. But once you understand what you're working with, it's easier to access the tools that you need. And once you know those things, this is where the powerful stuff happens, because that's when you can really, truly live at your best. Because it's like weakness. People talk about weaknesses and strengths. It's like spending your whole life not knowing that you're left-handed and then finding out one day when you break your arm and you sit there and you're thinking, oh, wow, this is easier. And it's like, because you were forced to write right-handed. And that, I'm going to stop talking in a second. I've been talking a lot. But it's the same as the left-right hand. Predominantly pre-World War II, everybody was forced to write right-handed. And it's like mind-blowing that, like today, that like nobody even thinks about whether that's an issue or not. But if you wrote left-handed, you were weird, many, many decades ago. But people have always been left-handed, even before they allowed people to, conventionally just start supporting people with left-handed,
and we've
writing, golf clubs, all those kind of things. So neurodiversity been around a long time, but only now are we grasping the tools and the importance of supplying people with those tools. Similar to your transition, a lot of people, when you're not educated around or understand it, I mean, I don't even want to imagine the journey you went on through that. But if you look at archaic writings of the Egyptians and various others, I'm telling you now, if they could convert, they would have done that thousands of years ago. The Romans, the Greeks, it's the telltale signs are all there, but only now through education have people standing up for their own rights. The sad thing is, why do we have to make a noise just to be who we are? Does that make sense? I mean, Jamie, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it really is something that needs to change in the education system and in society. And, bringing it back to communication, we all could communicate better, as we've been talking about. And part of being able to do that is having the resources and the tools. There is no doubt in my mind that once this diagnosis goes through and I get the resources that I need, my life is going to radically change.
Yeah.
Because, step one was realizing that I needed resources. Step two was starting to learn that these resources exist, because as I started to unmask and come out about my neurodivergence and my autism, more people started to come into my life. And then they're like, yeah, I'm just throwing out an example, like this aide that comes to me 3 days a week and helps me organize. And I was like, what? I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, I live by myself. That would change my life as an entrepreneur entirely. Like, the amount of there are things that are so easy for me that would take someone lifetimes to learn. But there are the littlest things for me, like doing the dishes, that it's like that could be a meltdown. Internally, like I feel like I'm gonna implode because it's so overwhelming. Just a couple of dishes to me are so overwhelming, and it's almost really challenging to even describe why that is. So having resources is life altering. We need to change the education. In doing so, we are all going to learn more about each other, like how we've all been doing through the pandemic, right? A lot of us went internally and we said, am I happy? What would make me happier? Am I being who is my best self? Am I being a kind person? How can I be a better person? What is it that I need to learn? How can I protect myself? I mean, all of these things. And it helped us to open ourselves up, and therefore we all open up. And as we learn more about ourselves, we can communicate that much better. So step one is going inside and looking at your unconditional self-love, looking at your awareness of yourself, figuring that out, and then translating it. It will happen so much more naturally at that point.
Yeah.
Oh, Joel, I'm handing over to you for a second because my mind is going in overdrive here, and I've got so many questions. I'm not going to shut up. So
I'm used to it. So, and I lost my train of thought. There it goes.
Well, you were bringing up Jessica's comment, which I was trying to
Yes.
to read.
And I was covering Mac's face as well.
That's all good.
Yes, 100%. The only reason transition is required is that the rules of society become too overbearing in the first place. The binary is man-made. It is a construct of our minds to control those of us who would otherwise change the world. And yes, there's incredible truth to that, Jessica. Absolutely. It's something that I think a lot about. One of the other perspectives that I have chosen to take, not just even about the binary construct or the gender construct or any construct, but really just all of this is the human's desire to feel safe and to understand. And so we find words where it's almost like this, again, it comes back to that innate desire to belong, to be seen, accepted, and loved, right? That is always what it comes back to. I promise you. That is always what it comes back to. And so in order to do this, there's almost this subconscious desperation that we all have, that we're grasping at these words to understand, to explain, to express, because otherwise, how are we on the same page? And a lot of us don't feel seen and heard and understood if we are speaking different language. And so one of the ways that I have healed within myself, not that perspective, Jessica, is wrong or right, because I believe it is true. It's an and, yes, and I have found a lot of peace in looking at the fact that, yes, there is this construct, and this construct is teaching us so much. about ourselves and helping us to understand ourselves. And even though it's not something that I resonate with, I only know that because it existed already. So if the binary construct did not exist, I would have no idea that I was non-binary, because I don't even think I wouldn't know what non-binary is. And the reality is that regardless of whether there's a construct or not, I am as I am, right? So I am non-binary, whether I had the language for it or not. Was I looking for the language? Yes, absolutely. But the language was not there. And so as we are deconstructing these constructs together as a collective, as a society, we are gaining so much on a soul level.
Yeah.
And so this is really all expansion. We don't know what light is if we don't have darkness. We don't know what makes us happy, what brings us the greatest joy, if we do not understand our deepest sorrow and anger and grief and all of those emotions. And so the communication is a lot about understanding how we feel. And humans are feeling beings. You could almost say not even human beings, we're feeling beings. That's what we came here to do. And being neurodivergent might mean for you that you have challenges expressing and understanding your emotions. And that can translate into a different way of communicating. And so back again, when we know who we are and we love ourselves unconditionally, we can love unconditionally others and be open in that space. Does that make sense?
Oh, I tell you what, it's so, when you say it like that, it's so simple. But as human beings, we love complicating things just because we can. I mean, I complicate things when it comes to my eating habits. My kids get very frightened. I'll mix anything together just to try it out to see if it's what I like or not. And then I know other people who won't have anything but, you know, pasta and fries, and that because those are the two things that they can trust, and they won't try anything else. But I was just thinking of this analogy of, if we threw the whole world's population into the sea all at once and told them to swim, back to land, and those who couldn't swim, and we turned around and went, just man up, man, just get on with it, because they either didn't know how to swim or they don't have the tools to be able to swim. Water's too cold, water's too hot, don't have goggles, don't have flippers, all these things that all of us could get back to shore if the right questions were asked and we understood the human being, the individual. But we do that in society. We throw somebody in a situation and we go, deal with it. And it's like,
yes.
Well, hold on. Did you find out if this person, can they swim? Did you ask the basic question first? Like, it seems obvious, but we don't. And we, little things like, and I say little things, neurodiversity. When Joel and I had the first conversation 2 years ago on an open forum on LinkedIn,
I still owe you dinner for that one.
Hey,
I still owe you dinner for that one.
But when we had the first conversation, the number of really educated people that came on and had never heard the word neurodiversity or neurodivergence, or it was foreign. And even today, there are still, so from an education, that's why I say we've come along, we have, still so far to go. I just loved what you put there with regards to that love and acceptance side of things, because if we looked at, if before we opened our mouths and started conversing with somebody else, if we just reminded ourselves, if there was like a pause button that kind of went and like played in the back of your head, just like, just remember, all that we want is to be loved and accepted, and that will remind us of what we need and remind us on how we need to deal with somebody else so that we give them the respect of their needs. But, I find the world is we look at TikTok. I mean, 8 seconds in, or 3 seconds in, and you scrolling on already, you've lost interest. So, the world we live in tries to, and I'm going to put this as a parent, because when you have a child that's screaming, it's easier to turn around and give them whatever they want rather than find out why they're screaming. So it's like, here's that lollipop. Oh, I'll switch the TV on, but you don't understand the cause. You're just treating the outcome, and that's the challenge with parents of children with autism. It's the same thing. It's, if we just took a breath, understood why, how, and what we need to do, get those tools in place, we have a much better quality of life. But instead, we'll bang our heads against the wall, we'll drive ourselves nuts, and people will have conflicts and arguments, and because they don't, and then they'll turn around and say, "Oh man, that person's an idiot because they're always fighting with me," but they've never heard that person, and that person's never heard them. So you can never, solve that issue unless people take that breath and come back to what you were saying there, Jamie.
It's harder to do than people, realize in the moment. They just, there's a lot of emotions that come up when one is trying to get themselves to that space. And one of the experience of that is burnout. Like, I'll tell you, it was actually, I think it was 2 days ago. What was I watching? I was watching something or whatever, and someone was talking about, they phrased it as autistic burnout. And I was like, oh my God, I never thought about my burnout even on my journey of all of this, and just experiencing the burnout, whether it's sensory overload and all of that. Hold on, I want to read Stefan's comment. I used to be the kind of guy who said, just man up, but I've learned how poor and limited that thinking is. Not only does it force people into a role stereotype, but it also makes us work alone. So instead of man up and swim to shore alone, we can do better if we all work to build a boat and more people learn more skills. Yes, I absolutely
love that.
And I appreciate your vulnerability
and
sharing that transformation of your perspective. It takes a lot of courage to share, I thought this, and now I realize that's not the best way. And now I'm thinking this way. And that is beautiful. That is powerful to come into that space. And that is the piece right there that we can all be learning from, is bringing in that vulnerability. Because if we are afraid to speak our mind, if we are afraid to say something that might ruffle a feather, or that in a context is maybe, the wrong way to some other person, like, that's always going to be possible, because we're all filtering life through our experience, which is all from that insecurity and that desire, again, let's say it together, of the belonging, love, and acceptance, right? Being seen and heard and accepted. So coming into that space and sharing that and figuring that out, like, you've definitely inspired lots of people by saying that, either by that awareness that they needed themselves, or even just by having the courage to share that. So I thank you. Where was I? Oh yes. So that autistic burnout. And then I realized, okay, there's even this other added component, because now that the language is there, same with trans, non-binary, all these things, this is newer language of something that's always been. And so we're all alchemizing and recalibrating. And it's bringing us to this awareness of, now, here's what was, here's what is, and figuring it out in the in-between. And that in itself can be exhausting and cause burnout. And so it's going to require, again, going internally and creating that safe space. And the more that we can say, I am scared, you're scared, I'll hold your hand, I'll sit next to you, I'll sit 5 feet from you if that's what makes you comfortable, I'll talk to you through a screen, I will listen and sit here and do nothing. Everyone needs something different. And the moment that we stop assuming that someone else has needs that are our needs, or that someone else doesn't care about what our needs are, or that our needs and our differences are not valid. It opens up that big space of possibility of connection, communication, and love. But it's got to come from internally first and foremost. And the education piece and how that shows up in schools will translate to how things show up at home. And the way things show up at home are going to translate to how they show up at schools, because parents have power, have huge power, and everyone needs an advocate. And everyone is worthy of an advocate. And if you do not feel like you have been advocated for, I see you and I hear you and I literally have lived it. And I know that you deserve more than that. But become your own advocate.
I'm like, I've got goosebumps here, man. Just the raw honesty and, hearing, with that opening up introduction where you went through all these things you've had to deal with, and somebody who's speaking with so much love and compassion, it's easy to think that when somebody's been through and been on the journey that you have, that they'll be full of animosity and hate and grudges, and because people, I was listening to somebody today that you're bearing a grudge against somebody that they haven't spoken to in 10 years. They can't remember why they had the grudge, because there was like some family dispute, but like, and I'm like, really? Like, is that what your life amounts to? This one little grudge, like that one moment in time? Like, we've got to take a step back.
We have.
And, what's it, Brenda Lee's, I'm just going to put this up over here. She said, it's beautiful when we are able to approach others with a lens of curiosity. And that's what I'm seeing from you, Jamie, is just that like sponge, that like one willingness to learn and openness to learn about others, that we all see in the world based on our own individual filters, experience, beliefs, and values.
100%.
So Joel, I could see you wanted to say something there, my friend. I'm going to go to you.
No, I was just going to alert you of Lewis's wanting to schedule a call with you.
We can do that after. Let's stay focused.
No,
But
then
Lewis,
he actually wrote
100%.
it. He actually wrote it right here.
I know. I saw. That's awesome stuff. I mean, multitasking here. But you see, ADHD. If you bring something else up, I'm going to go. Where's the Zoom call? Let me schedule that now. You're going to lose me, so I need to stick around.
The anger, the hatred, the frustration, all of that, it took a really long time for me to have an understanding of where that was coming from. And some days I'm still figuring that out to deeper layers. But the central thing that I've realized is we only fear because we love. Because we're afraid to lose what we love, who we love, the ability to do something that we love, anything within that space. And our primal intuition in fight or flight mode, because of how we needed to be, way back a long time
when we were running
ago,
around
right?
with a little loincloth and a spear. From a lion.
Is anger and what or rage, and what's happening is actually adrenaline. Our hormones are reacting. And once I started to realize this, I started to look at where the fear was, where the insecurity was. And I realized that it came back to surprise, the belonging, the feeling seen, the feeling heard, and feeling loved. Jessica says, I'm just starting to figure out what I have to bring to the world, because the demands on my time and attention required just too consistently to support my own survival. Yes, Jessica, that's 1,000%. A lot of what's happening is we are just fighting for life, right? When one is disabled or going through any number of things, at the same time, or even just one thing, right? It's not just because I've dealt with 3 things. Like, I don't believe in the impression Olympics.
No.
It doesn't help. Okay. Like, just because I had 3 major things doesn't mean that your one major thing is less important or was less impactful than my 3 major things. It just so happens that my journey was 3 major things and your thing was one thing. Right. And it can feel exhausting to go from there into all these different things. Like, even the idea of like, oh, okay, so now I'm well enough to consider what it is that I want to do with my life. That's not something that everyone understands. I do, but it's definitely something that is, it's huge. And I acknowledge you and I honor you for what you've gone through to this point and how you are now at this space where you get to think for yourself. And that's amazing. And that's a freedom and something to feel grateful for. And so back to the anger and everything, right? That's something that's a process. It's a process to us. I like that background. It's a process to figure out, you know, what we're angry about, and then also just being able to even communicate, like, right, like, can I even understand what the emotion is? Sometimes that feels really tough, right? It's like, well, what am I even feeling right now? But a lot of the times when we don't understand what we're feeling, we go back to that primal state and we're automatically 0 to 60 angry. I'm going to tell you a story. My most embarrassing story, like the moment that I am, one of the moments, if not the moment that I'm least proud of, is this moment. This moment. I imagine I'm young teenage Jamie. I am like 13. I am in a goth phase. I am so angry, so confused, totally like queer and closeted, and I'm wearing trip pants, a black shirt that probably has a skull on it. Like, I am literally the epitome. Okay. I am enraged, already in a bad mood. I come into the kitchen and I smell brownies. And at the time, this was like any form of chocolate, but a chocolate brownie could totally help soothe anything. That was like a key soothing method. And my little sister, who's like almost 5 years younger than me, has made brownies for a school class. And I come in and I ask her if I can have a brownie. And she says no, which for her is incredibly difficult already, period. End of statement. But I have zero compassion for this at this time, because all I hear is, no, I can't have the brownie that I want. And I want to be clear that I completely blacked out. I don't remember doing this. But what apparently happened was I tried to physically choke my sister out for this brownie. I was enraged. I was gone. Like, to this day, I've never done anything remotely like this. I am proudly and deeply nonviolent, in large part because I was told that this happened. And I tell that story a lot to show people, because people are like, you're so peaceful, you're so compassionate, you're so this. And they look at this of like, they can't fathom ever getting there. And I want you to know that we could all get there. Anyone can get there if you want
absolutely.
to. And I have forgiven myself. She has forgiven me. We are openly talking about this. It's okay that I'm sharing the story. You know, and the reality is, we often think in the heat of the moment that we can't move on. And we can. We can move on. We can love through. And we can become better by learning ourselves better and choosing to be that person, because that is exactly who we all need, is exactly who you are. That is why you are here, to be your version of special, because none of us are better than or less than. We're all different, and it's all beautiful. Akam, I love you, brother. Yeah, what's up, manifestors? I'm gonna get him a shirt one day with that. His tagline. Yeah, manifest your truth to come to you.
Yes.
And the courage to share it. And if you are feeling afraid of sharing your truth or going there, I can see 3 people who can hold space, who can understand that. You are not on an island, and you don't need to be on an
Well,
island.
technically,
Well, yes, technically, I'm in New York and I'm on an island, and it's sinking more and more.
And
every
we're
year.
on a bigger mud island.
Yeah, you know, they're on an
yeah,
island. That's probably also sinking more every year. But you know, you're not alone, and you've never actually been alone. And it's very easy, whether you identify with neurodivergence or autism or neither, to feel alone. We all can know what it feels like to feel alone in a moment, in a situation, in a period of time, in a lifetime. But you are not alone, and you are worthy of your hands being held, and for a hug, if that's okay for you, or an affirmation. You are seen and heard today.
Whew. I tell you what, you know, and it's so important that that message gets across, Jamie, because in a lot of ways we are extremely lucky. Whose message was that? Stevens has just come up.
Yeah, I'm
Sorry,
reading. I'm reading it. You can finish your thought. I'm reading it.
You can multitask. I can't.
Well, I can magically multitask, but for example, if you needed me to type something while we were reading this and I was talking to you, I would probably write what you're telling me, or like what I'm saying, you know, kind of thing. So the question really is, you know, he's saying that, you know, he's looking to figure out how to give back. His day job is in data analytics and visualization, and it doesn't satisfy personally. Powerful realization. Kudos to you. Awesome. So how do we learn ways to bring the love and togetherness to our daily lives and work? I love that question. And the answer is to go inside, to go internally within yourself and figure this out for you and seek for what you need and express and display that. And you will find yourself with an abundance of energy and desire, and it will magnetize the people to you who need your lessons, who need your awareness, who need your gifts. And you will just figure out. That's organically how it happens, right? We never truly know what our words mean to someone or what an action means to someone in that moment. We may have an idea, and someone may even convey it to us, but there's always the people there that are in silence or feel silent or feel the fear of expressing or that they can't. And you say that one thing, or you look at them that one way, or you put out that one post, or you gave them that one hug, or you respected the fact that they didn't want that one hug, and they were like, oh. And that's that moment of feeling seen and heard and belonging and accepted. So the overcomplicating is that overthinking that we all do at one point or another, some of us more than others. Guilty. Where we sit and we wonder, like, what more could we be doing? And the reality is, yes, there is likely more. If you're asking yourself that, it's probably not because you haven't done more, because you just didn't feel like it, but it's more so you didn't understand, right? As you're saying, you are looking for what that looks like for you. And there's going to be that thing, and it's going to light you up. Like, reach out to me, because I love helping people. That's a gift that I have. I love helping people figure out what that thing is. And there is a wholeness and a completion that comes with that. And we all have a purpose. We can all have passion. We can all have desire. And we all have gifts that are worth sharing. And part of the journey of life is figuring out what that is. And for many of us, that's the greatest gift. Figuring that out for myself is why I'm still here. I'm not suicidal. I'm thrilled to live my life, and I'm so grateful to be here and for everything that I've gone through, because of what I'm capable of providing now. And, you know, sharing your truth is the medicine for both you and the person doing it.
Absolutely.
Sure. Jamie, I just wanted to finish off because it segues lovely into, you know, the thought I was having earlier about the fact that, you know, we're lucky in the sense that technology has changed so much over the last 50 years that there's no excuse to be not heard or be alone and in isolation, because and LinkedIn, as an example, used to be just a place to come and find a job or to come and post a thing, and now it's an opportunity where people, 65% of people show up to learn something, to educate themselves, to have their voices heard, to share stories like this. And I've met some of the most incredible human beings over the last few years just by collaborating and having conversations. And for me, that's a incredible blessing, because that feeds my soul. But at the same time, if you're out there and you're listening to this and you're watching this, collaborating, showing up in whether it be a LinkedIn Live like this, just in the comments, and connecting with like-minded people, or going into audio rooms, or setting up your own audio rooms. If that's something you need help with, just reach out to Joel or myself. We've done hundreds. But it allows you to be able to connect with people. Your tribe is probably much larger than you realize, if you were just open to reaching out and telling people, hey, this is who I am. And it's okay if people don't like you. There's thousands that will, so don't worry. Loads of people don't like me. That's okay. I'm not sure why. I mean, come on. I mean, this is all lovely, but anyway. But the reality is, our tribe is out there. So just be vulnerable and be willing to step out to connect with other people. Jamie, everybody who's watched, please make sure that you are following and connecting with Jamie, because it's been an hour, but the amount of just love and compassion that I felt in this conversation is something that I can go through 100 audio rooms just on random business advice and all those and it doesn't feed the soul. So Jamie, kudos to you. Thank you so much for your vulnerability, your openness, your honesty.
Thank you,
Jamie. Joel, is there anything else you want to add?
Yes, Mac, before we do close off the room, having successfully run over once again, well done. I want to ask you, Matt, because you're the only one of us three who have actually got a bat cave in your house. How many people have been watching this, and how many people are still there? Because however many people are still there, I've got a little surprise.
Well, it's a good question. I've been trying to focus here, because if I look at my other screens, then there's trouble, man. Let's go and have a look at.
What did I tell you about opening new websites?
Careful. Let's have a look here. We definitely still have several people still on LinkedIn watching, which is good.
When you say several people,
I'm just trying to go on there on my desk. You see, you got me distracted now, man.
You love me, really.
Oh, of course we do, man. Of course we do. I wouldn't have shown up if I didn't.
No, I would have just dragged you out of bed.
Well, while you're figuring that out, everyone in the comments, I will respond. I promise to all of your comments after the show. You've all been putting really, really fascinating and meaningful comments and questions, and I look forward to answering them. And so grateful to all of the pals on here who showed up.
People still on LinkedIn.
And if we're not connected, let's connect. And if you want to connect, reach out. I am willing to do anything on a phone call or on a video call. Ideally, text is really challenging for me. It will frustrate me, and I won't be able to understand the conversation, the context, and I won't be able to read the social cues, and I'll start to spiral into an anxiety attack, and I'd really prefer not to have that. But any other way, even if you want to do video off, I don't care. I'm happy to communicate. I love people. I love beings of all kinds, and you know, my purpose is to anchor the remembrance of unconditional love back into Gaia and the collective. It's really always been here, but it's a remembrance, and I'm here for you. I'm here to show up. I don't want you in burnout. I want you happy and healthy and living your best life and having that ripple off into the collective. It's not as complicated as it feels, I promise.
Amazing.
Well, we did say this was a Halloween special, so the special surprise I've got for everyone, Mac, you got the multi-screen again, so please share this code to 5 lucky people who will be able to get a discount on our next, our Halloween, our actual Halloween.
It is on Halloween too. You're
yes. Right. And I just created that a few moments ago when you were ranting on.
Well, one of the things we can do is we can drop it straight into the comments for the other channels because it's on.
Yeah, you can do that,
YouTube.
but I can't do it through LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm doing it. It's all good. So yeah, we'll drop that into the comments. Go and have a look. Go and comment and come and join.
Anyone who's still here, and there are 5. I think there are 5 available to use this discount code for our next our online neurodiverse friendly networking event, which is on Halloween. Sorry. And if you use the word party 10, it's 10% off the early bird tickets.
Amazing. And we've got an incredible speaker then as well, but we do need to wrap up as well.
Yes, we do.
We'll go to Joel's profile, check out all his posts, go to Jamie's profile, go and connect. Jamie, thank you so much for sharing the love and the time.
Thank you.
So glad to be connected. Yeah, where have you been?
Around from lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, but you know, I'm looking forward to talking more. And
likewise,
I don't really understand why anybody wouldn't like you either, but you know what? It's okay. There's billions of us for a reason. So I want to thank both of you so much for having me. Like I really can't emphasize how much this opportunity meant to me. It's the first time I've ever been invited to speak openly about neurodivergence and autism. It's impacting my life on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis, and it does so for so many people. And I also feel like people who are, you know, non-binary and neurodivergent don't get to speak to that connection piece like ever. So I'm really grateful.
It needs to be heard, so thank you.
I'm really grateful, and so grateful for everyone who tuned in. I love you unconditionally from the bottom of my heart, and I look forward to connecting with everyone.
And thank you, Mac, for turning up. And again, yes, Jamie, thank you. And we hope to continue this conversation.
Yes.
At a later date.
Definitely.
Amazing.
Cheers, everybody.